Mr. President, while the members of the Senate were enjoying Thanksgiving, thousands of hardworking Americans were navigating the wreckage of a financial shipwreck. I'm referring to the collapse of the cryptocurrency exchange known as FTX. While I'm sure that many have heard about FTX's implosion and the resignation of its CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, there's one part of the story you may have missed. In the moments after the FTX platform collapsed, one of the first steps that the company took was to freeze user accounts. That means before many users even knew what was happening, they were denied access to any funds remaining. And as a result, their investments may have gone down with the ship. Think of it like this. You show up at your bank, the same bank that happily accepted your money week after week, but this time the door is locked and the lights are off. All the tellers have gone home. The security guard is turning you away at the door. And as for your money, well, it just disappeared. But when you asked to see the books of this depository to figure out what happened, you came to learn that they didn't have any books. That's exactly what happened to FTX crypto users like Nick Howard, who shared his story with America on National Public Radio. When Nick first opened his account with FTX, he says he had no intention of making any speculative or risky investment. In fact, he was using the platform to store his paychecks from his employer, which had chosen to pay him through cryptocurrency known as Tether. Tether is one of the so-called stable coins. It was designed to offer greater security and stability than other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin by being pegged to the value of $1. Well, as Nick learned the hard way, there is no such thing as stability when it comes to cryptocurrency. When Nick Howard first signed up for FTX, his employer assured him the platform was, quote, really good, really stable. So he took his employer's word for it, as well as the word of public figures and advisors, well-respected names like Larry David, Tom Brady, who'd appeared on television on ads for FTX. Nick had $16,000 worth of paychecks deposited in his FTX account by the time the platform imploded. Nick's a young fella. He said he doesn't have a lot of savings, but that $16,000 represented half of all that he had accumulated in his life. So when Nick found out that he had little or no hope of retrieving his money, he told National Public Radio, "I feel like I'm in the middle of a trauma response." Who can blame him? In the past few years, platforms like FTX have spent billions of dollars to try to create a veneer of credibility for an industry fueled by greed and many times deception. These slick ad campaigns have been designed to distract American people from the fact that cryptocurrency is extremely volatile and barely regulated. Sadly, these ad campaigns worked their will on 1 in 5 Americans who say they either invested or traded crypto. All of them are at risk. It was just a few months ago that I stood on the same Senate floor and expressed my concern about the dangers of cryptocurrency and platforms like FTX. Well, in the 3 weeks since I last spoke on the floor, billions of dollars have disappeared in a black hole of financial collapse. Hardworking Americans who are already being squeezed by inflation are paying an even higher price. And today, Sam Bankman-Fried is Exhibit A in the story of the crypto crash. His personal plunge from billionaire to bankrupt has been well documented. In some ways, this is not a new story. The alleged fraud by Mr. Bankman-Fried is nothing more than a 21st century Ponzi scheme. As CEO of FTX, Mr. Bankman-Fried secretly siphoned $10 billion from the platform, $10 billion that belonged to investors like Nick Howard. What did Mr. Bankman-Fried do with the $10 billion? He transformed it into assets of his own personal hedge fund called Alameda. Let me say that another way. Sam Bankman-Fried transferred $10 billion from his platform users in order to fund his own risky bets. And days before FTX imploded, just hours before, he had the nerve to tweet out, and I quote, "FTX is fine. Assets are fine." He even tweeted, and I quote, "We don't invest client assets." All lies. That was a brazen, bald-faced attempt from the CEO of what claimed to be the most reliable crypto trading platform in the world. It's the same shady tactics we've seen before when Bernie Madoff was caught with his hand in the till more than a decade ago. But there's one key difference. Crypto speculators and scam artists like Sam Bankman-Fried pride themselves on being disruptors. They claim they're sticking it to the old traditional finance and the big banks, giving the little guy the power of financial freedom. I know the presiding officer is a music fan, and he remembers the lyrics of the old song, "Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose." Well, FTX has taught investors like Nick Hard they have everything to lose. That's the truth. The myth of crypto is a ruse, one that is designed to dupe hardworking Americans like Nick Howard into forking over their life savings to companies like FTX. And in the case of Sam Bankman-Fried, he burned tens of millions of dollars trying to brand himself as a noble, altruistic philanthropist. Mr. Bankman-Fried even plastered an image of himself on the walls of Union Station. That's less than a mile away from where we're meeting, on Capitol Hill. It was a big ad and a big photo, according to the Washington Post, and it said, quote, "I'm in on crypto to make global impact for good." My. Well, it's hard to see anything good about defrauding your own investors or scamming working Americans out of their life savings. And it goes without saying there's nothing good about leading an industry that produces 3 times as much pollution as all of America's largest coal plants did in the year 2021. So this is my advice to the American people when it comes to the crypto world. Don't be fooled. Crypto speculators like Sam Bankman-Fried, who became one of the youngest billionaires in the world and lives in a guarded compound in the Bahamas, really don't have your best interest at heart. They're trying to catfish you into their grift. And the moment you take the bait, they'll take your money and run. Whatever credibility the crypto industry once had has been challenged by the collapse of FTX. So it's time for wiser minds, more careful thinking in the financial world to cash out of the crypto casino. Let's start with Fidelity. What do I mean by that? Well, over the summer, Fidelity, one of the largest and most respected names in investment houses, one of the largest 401k providers in the world, announced that it would allow plan sponsors to offer plan participants exposure to Bitcoin. Bitcoin embodies the volatility of the entire crypto industry. Its value has dropped like a rock in under a year. Now, I know the stock market has suffered too, but listen to this. The cost of one Bitcoin fell from nearly $69,000 in 2021 to roughly $16,000 today. More than 70% loss in value in 1 year. Now imagine that the value of your 401k account was dependent on the health of Bitcoin, as Fidelity suggests you might do. The value of that is in free fall. There are more than 32 million Americans that invest with Fidelity, and many of them are relying on their 401ks to retire in dignity. These Americans deserve better than having their financial security jeopardized by a digital asset that can lose thousands of dollars in the course of a day. Last July, as a customer of Fidelity, I sent a letter to the CEO, who I don't know personally, and I raised concerns about the potential risk and financial dangers associated with investing in digital assets. Last week, I turned around and sent a second letter. It seems he missed the first one, urging Fidelity to reconsider his decision. My hope is that the company will do what's best for those saving for retirement and change course immediately. At a moment when retirement security is already at risk for working families, there is no excuse for exposing them to this kind of volatility, particularly in long-term and retirement accounts. Let's learn from the losses of retail investors like Nick Howard. The American people desperately need better. And I would just say that I've been a crypto skeptic from the start, and sadly the evidence that's being presented to me suggests that my concerns were not misplaced. We have an obligation to protect the American public. At this stage, the best I can do is come to the Senate floor, send out letters, send out press releases, and warn people. What we should do is to regulate this industry in a way to protect the American public. We have done it over and over again throughout our history, many times after the American families and investors have been burned badly. Well, FTX is living proof that we need to do it again and do it quickly. I don't know what the prospects of passing that kind of legislation are in a divided Congress in the next few weeks, but I can tell Americans across the board, think twice before you sign up for the crypto craze. Mr. President, I yield the floor.